The brain, the most powerful and yet, I would say, mysterious organ in the human body. It's our very own supercomputer and it controls everything from our heartbeat, our breath, our movement. It regulates our hormones, it processes emotions, it helps us make decisions. And yet, if you're anything like me, you know nothing about it. You just hope that it will keep working without any major glitches because otherwise we're not getting another one. Today, we're joined by world renowned neurosurgeon Dr. Charlie Teo to explore the state of brain health, cutting edge treatments, and what we can do on the daily to protect and optimize our most vital organ. Dr. Teo, an absolute honour to have you with us here at the Aging Project.
It's a pleasure, Shelley. It's lovely to be here. It's good to see you again.
Tell me, as a nation, how would you describe the state of our brains? You know, we're always working on our gut health these days, but what about our brain health?
Well, without sounding too pessimistic, I guess the short answer is we don't look after our brain health. We're all guilty of it. I've visited many wellness centres, for example, and if you go into a wellness centre, they often have excellent comprehensive programs for gut health, skin health, your immune system, kidneys, reproductive system, etc., etc. But very few interventions concentrate on brain health. So I guess it's not just this nation. I guess humanity in total has a poor understanding and a terrible lack of interventions for brain health.
Mm. What we do know is dementia is the second leading cause of death in Australia for women. Why is that?
Well, actually, you're right. In fact, you're the one that quoted that statistic, and I thought, God, that can't be right. And I looked it up, and I went to PubMed, and you're absolutely right. It's actually the number one leading cause of death in women. Overall, it's a second leading cause of death, second to cardiovascular and heart disease. So no, it's I had no idea it had that much impact on society and women in specifically. But you're absolutely right. Dementia is now becoming, I guess, a subject and a disease that we really need to talk about and try and prevent because it is having a huge impact on life expectancy.
I guess we're looking at that idea of overall aging, and you know, we've read that you're not going to die of old age. Something else is always going to get you first. It just seems to
Right,
happen when
right.
we are that little bit older. But what should we be doing? As you say, we're learning about gut health, we're learning about our microbiomes. Is it because it's tucked up inside here and we can't really see it? We can't really feel it. We don't really know when it feels unwell. What would be the signs of brain health? What can we
Yeah,
look out
look,
for?
I think your introduction nailed it, and your introduction basically said that you know we see the brain as this incredibly important organ, but we don't understand it. And I just want to try and make you feel a little bit better about that because you're not the only one that doesn't understand it. I liken it to an iceberg where we just see the tip of it. There's this huge amount of knowledge and information about the brain that is just unknown.
Mhm.
Uh, some have called it the last frontier. Some have said that we should explore the brain before we explore outer space. And I agree with that absolutely because I always think of this analogy. Think of this. Uh, as you know, a certain percentage of people on the spectrum have are savants, and they have this amazing capacity to memorize things. You know, there have been well-known savants who have memorized a telephone book or memorized 10,000 books. There's other savants who can go outside and look at a scene and come back in and paint it exactly perfectly, including the doves on a church facade. And and if you do an MRI scan on those people, those savants, structurally their brains are exactly the same as yours and mine.
Mhm.
So I guess my take home message from that is that a savant who has this amazing memory capacity uh, is something that we could actually tap into. I mean, we all have the ability to be savants. Uh, so, uh, so to explore the human brain, I think could answer many, many questions like the cure for cancer and all these questions that we're exploring into, but we haven't. The good news is that in 2009, the US government felt that if they poured money into the human brain, they will get the same return as pouring the money they poured into the Human Genome Project. So the Human Genome Project was incredibly profitable for America, about $147 return for every dollar spent on examining the human genome. So they poured millions and millions of dollars into examining the human brain and came up with a thing called the Human Connectome Project, HCP, which was published in 2016 in Nature. And the Human Connectome Project completely smashed our previous understanding of the human brain. And we now, I think, are at the verge of really getting a deep understanding of the human brain because of the Human Connectome Project. It was published in 2016. Most neuroscientists may have even read the article or cited the article when it first came out, but to understand it takes a huge amount of intellectual capacity. It's very, very hard to understand. The reason you're interviewing me is because I had the good fortune of coming across a genius from America, a guy called Mike Shagru. And if you ever met Mike Shagru, you'd think, oh my God, he's a genius. And I tapped into his genius. And basically I said to him, Mike, the Human Connectome Project that came out in 2016, I can't understand it. I tried reading it, and the first 2 pages, I just thought, oh my God, it's way above my level. And he said, yeah, I could help you understand that. I go, well, if you can develop an app that takes all the information from the Human Connectome Project and make it clinically applicable, I think that could be an absolute game changer. And so that's what he did. So we now have a better understanding of the human brain, but not as much as I think we need. I mean, the more money and time and effort we put into examining the human brain, I think the more we'll get out of it. So yes, it's an untapped energy source. It's an untapped potential for answers. And it's something that we really have a very rudimentary understanding of. Even me, who operates on the brain every day and who should have an in-depth knowledge of the human brain, I feel very inadequate when it comes to understanding the human brain completely.
Well, it's sort of frightening and exciting in the same breath, isn't it? Because, as you say, that this untapped potential, we get so excited about AI and what's coming and these incredible, as you say, advances in technology. But it
Yeah.
took someone's human brain to come up with that in the first place.
Yes.
They're obviously tapping into a place in their brain that not many of us can get to.
Yeah. So look, it's a well, it's having a huge impact on society now, the fact that we haven't understood the human brain, because when you bring up statistics like the mortality rate from dementia, for example, I think it really does highlight the fact that we need to put the effort into understanding the human brain. I feel a little bit embarrassed about this, Shelley, but I'm going to confess it on a public forum. And that is, as a medical student, I used to think that mental health was different to brain health. Now, I don't know why, because I don't know where I thought mental health was located in the body. But I always used to think, oh, that's depression, that's anxiety, it's got nothing to do with the human brain. And I guess I had some justification in thinking that, because as medical students and as neuroscientists, we never learnt about the area of the brain that controls depression or melancholia or, anhedonia or anxiety. We just, we know Brodmann was this neuroanatomist, neuroscientist, who in 1909 told us that the brain should be divided up into 47 different areas called Brodmann areas. So we know the Brodmann area for speech, we know the Brodmann area for sensation and motor and language and vision, etc., but we never identified the area of the brain that controlled emotion and mental well-being, the ability to relate to people, empathy, imagination, all those sorts of things were never identified. And so people like me, sort of dummies, and I say that without any false modesty, I really was. Now that I'm more enlightened, I think, gee, I was a dummy to accept that. I used to think that depression and anxiety was something else. I didn't think of it as an unwell brain. It's crazy. I thought of stroke. I thought of vascular malformations. I thought of brain tumors affecting the brain, but I never thought that depression, anxiety, PTSD, autism, dementia were, it was all up here.
Mm.
Now that
And
we've done the Human Connectome project, I can tell you that we can identify parts of the brain now that are abnormally functioning to create those mental health issues. So
that's
now, when
extraordinary.
someone comes to a doctor and says, I've got anxiety, we can scan them and we can say, oh, you've got anxiety? Well, you've got this area right here, and we can show to the patient of abnormality. It's almost like saying to a patient that comes in with a headache, here's the cause of your headache. You've got a brain tumor in the frontal lobe. Now, when someone comes in and says, I've got brain fog or I've got poor memory, I can scan them and say, here's the problem. It's like showing them they've got a stroke. It is fascinating, Shelley, and
That is
it's really
fascinating.
completely changed our whole concept of the human brain and mental health.
At the Aging Project, we believe everyone should have the opportunity to understand their genes, and we've created a program to help you do just that. Over the past 3 years and 100 plus podcast episodes, we've interviewed world-leading longevity experts, many highlighting the power of genetic insights. But when we went searching for the best DNA testing option in Australia, we hit a dead end. If DNA knowledge is so vital, why wasn't there one trusted company offering the best test with the best insights? So we built it for ourselves and for our families and for you. We're incredibly proud of what we've created because we know that it will change lives, including yours. We've partnered with FitGenes, a world leader in genetic testing, to bring you Australia's most advanced, science-backed DNA program. It isn't just another health trend. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to discover your DNA and how to use that knowledge to make better choices. For the first time in history, we have access to the power of genetic testing, something no generation before us has had. So stop guessing what your body needs when a DNA test can give you personalised insights. If you're ready to learn and discover 200 healthy aging genes, join us for our free DNA webinar to learn why your genetic blueprint matters. Visit theagingproject.com to register. And because we want you aging well alongside us, we will send you our exclusive Stay Well scorecard bonus. This will land in your inbox just after the webinar. This is game changing. It's a resource that includes markers we want you tracking every year, starting now. It includes 50 blood markers, 5 critical health markers, including blood pressure and bone density, 9 general health indicators, and 4 mobility markers. This I cannot wait to share with you because it is life-changing information. Join our free DNA webinar, register today, and we'll see you soon. That is extraordinary. So we're talking with that scan, that's an MRI, yes? And is this available to anyone? I mean, if you were to go to your GP and say, look, I do have anxiety, I am feeling depressed, can they, I guess, give you a referral for an MRI?
Well, it's all very new. The company that designed the software that does it is an Australian-based company, actually. It's called Omniscient. And they poured millions and millions of dollars into basically tapping into Mike Shagru's brain. And so we combined Mike Shagru's brain with the best data scientists in the world, and they came up with this amazing software program that uses machine learning and AI to show you these areas of the brain that are abnormal. So if I could take you back 2 steps, a normal MRI scan that you know of is a structural scan. So someone comes in with a headache or a stroke, you scan them, and the MRI scan shows you they've got a tumor or they've had an area of dead brain or something, or a cyst or something structurally wrong with the brain. But it doesn't show you how the brain is functioning, how it's actually working, the activity of the brain. That's called a functional MRI scan. And the whole concept of functional MRI scans has been around for a long time. We've tried to master it, but it's been very hard to develop because it's always been a task-based functional MRI scan. In other words, you get the patient to lie under the scanner, you give them something that's bound to glucose. The glucose goes to the active part of the brain because the brain uses glucose, and that gives you information about that particular task. So as a neurosurgeon, for example, if we believe a tumor is close to the hand area, we'll ask for a functional MRI scan of the hand area. So the patient moves their hand while they get the glucose, and we can see the hand part of the brain. That's
Amazing. So hold there for a second. So actually there are those areas of the brain and it's been mapped. We now know, or you now know, exactly the sections that do movement. That to me is also extraordinary.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
No, but
didn't
Shelley, that's
realise
been
that.
around
That's
for ages.
amazing.
That's passé.
Yep. Okay, catching up. Catching up.
Yeah. So yeah, that's called a task-based functional MRI scan.
Hmm.
But I want you to think about this. Imagine if you wanted to map every function of the brain, every function, not just how the hand moves or the finger feels or the eyes see, but empathy, imagination, pain, melancholia, then you would have to get that patient to lie under the scanner and do all those things. I want you to now be sad. I want you to now be happy. I want you to now be
Hmm.
empathetic. Well, I'm sure you can understand that's impossible.
Hmm.
It would require someone to lie under the scanner for weeks or months on end, getting injections, having scans. It's just impossible. Well, we can do it now because these smart people, it wasn't me, but these smart people thought, well, hang on, if glucose is taken up by the most active part of the brain, then what else does the active part of the brain use? It uses oxygen. Well, the MRI characteristics of oxygenated blood is different to the MRI characteristics of deoxygenated blood.
Hmm.
So that means if you can figure out the ratio of oxygenated to deoxygenated blood, you can figure out the oxygen extraction, which means you can figure out the activity. And therefore, hopefully, you can figure out the activity of different parts of the brain at any one time with the eyes closed, with the patient lying there, not doing anything. It's called a resting state functional MRI scan. And we can now do that and show every function or every different part of the brain and its activity at any one time.
You've blown my brain. You've blown my mind.
Oh,
That is
believe me,
extraordinary.
it's an absolute game changer. I wish I had the intellectual capacity to have come up with it. I didn't, but I at least had the capacity to tap into the
Mhm.
and realize the potential of Mike Chagru and others, and come up with this map. Yeah,
I know
yeah.
you do a lot of work, Doctor, with TBI or traumatic brain injuries. And I'm lucky enough to know our fantastic world champion surfer and Olympian, Owen Wilson. Owen Wright, the good one, Shelley. He's obviously a very well-known person who has gone through the clinics and gone through, I guess, this education program that is happening around the country now, no matter what sort of sports people have done or bringing that awareness to TBI. What are some of the symptoms? Because I know if you've had a dramatic head knock, you would know that it had happened. Was small concussions, can they build up over time and create symptoms that we may not have even related to perhaps a head knock?
Yes, and it's good that you bring this particular disease up because it's a disease that has been poorly documented, has been poorly accepted, poorly treated because again, doctors are scientists and doctors want evidence-based medicine before they practice. So me as a neurosurgeon saw lots of head injuries before Omniscient came along, and you would scan these people who had symptoms after a head knock or after several head knocks, and they'd be really quite devastated. They have a lot of neurological problems, but because you couldn't see anything on the scan, you'd think, oh, gee, is it all in their head? Or is it, just anxiety? Or is it depression? Or is it, look, I don't, I know I sound like an idiot, and I was, because I was just not enlightened. And again, most neuroscientists aren't. So as doctors, we go, okay, there's no blood test we can do to show TBI or
Mhm.
CTE. There's no MRI scan that will show TBI or CTE. So that means that there's really no metric by which we can either diagnose or assess the treatments of TBI or the severity of TBI. So without that, it's very hard to be scientific. It's very hard to come up with objective evidence that you're doing something worthwhile or not doing something worthwhile. What we need, of course, is it wouldn't be great if we could scan someone with TBI, show abnormalities,
Mhm.
then treat them and show the abnormalities get better. Now that is going to be a game changer, and that's what we can now do. So what we can do is scan someone like Owen Wright and go, okay, so Owen had your typical symptoms of a TBI:
Mhm.
brain fog, poor short-term memory, emotional lability, dizziness, poor sleep pattern, just their brain's just not working well.
Mhm.
Sometimes more specific than that, like vertigo and, sensory disturbance and language disturbance, but generalized brain dysfunction. And he had it so badly that I can remember his wife telling me that before we treated him, he would often lie in bed for a couple of hours before he could get up, just because he didn't have the motivation
Mhm.
or the energy to get up. Okay, so you scan someone's brain like Owen Wright and you see nothing. But the MRI scan shows absolutely nothing. It's completely normal. But if you use one of the omniscient scans and scan his brain, we found multiple abnormalities in the activity of his brain, either
Mhm.
overactive parts of the brain or underactive parts of the brain.
Mhm.
Well, thankfully, we can now modify those specific parts of the brain that have abnormal function by using a thing called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So
Mhm.
TMS is a technology that's been around for 3 or 4 decades now. It's based on the principle that a strong magnetic field can influence an electrical field. And after all, that's what the brain is, just one big electrical current, an electrical organ. So we can now use targeted, focused, patient-specific transmagnetic stimulation uh, to either downregulate overactive parts of the brain or stimulate underactive parts of the brain to make the brain more normal. And it turns out that when you have these maps and you can personalize treatment of someone like Owen, you've got a whole lot better idea and a whole lot better chance of making them symptomatically better because you're actually treating his brain, not what you think a brain might need
Mhm.
to be treated, but the scan is actually a personalized scan of his brain. So we can treat him personally and comprehensively using these maps.
As you say, no two brains are the same. It sounds like um, science fiction, doesn't it? And I guess that's really what it is. It's science, and it's coming into the everyday. But to be able to do this, as someone, as you say, who has worked in this field for decades, it must be really exciting. Recently on the podcast, we met functional dentist Dr. Stephen Lin, who spoke about the benefits of a few products like vitamin D with K2, magnesium, mouth taping, and organ supplements. So, over at You Must Try It, we have these available for you. We love the Primal Energy Women's Formula because of its quality ingredients and its tastelessness. If you missed the episode, The Future of Dentistry is here. Check it out after you finish this one. And for any of the supplements mentioned, like the ones above, you can visit youmusttryit.com to learn more.
So yeah, it's given me a huge boost. I love it. In fact, I treated a girl with a 25-year-old girl with depression, and she was so bad that she was homebound, bedbound. She was suicidal. She tried everything. She tried non-targeted TMS. She tried SSRIs, SNRIs, CBT, everything. She was 25 and she was about to suicide. We mapped her with the omniscient scan and we treated her, and she's now medication free, back working in HR with a full-time job, living a full life. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that gave me as much professional satisfaction as operating on a brain tumor, taking a brain tumor out, and without the risk, without the risk of hurting her, because TMS is a very, very safe intervention. It's completely non-invasive. It has very few side effects, and so it either works or it doesn't work. So I've changed the life of that 25-year-old girl. I've saved her life without having to use a scalpel. So yeah, it's been great for me, for my soul. It's been great for, I think, uh, anyone with any sort of brain disorder. It's not just depression and anxiety. Any brain disorder, TBI, dementia, uh, pain syndromes, brain fog, uh, ADHD, any brain disorder that may not have a structural abnormality will have some sort of functional abnormality that we can now identify and target and treat.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And I do hope that this becomes available to everybody in that need, as it will through Cingulum Health. For the rest of us who perhaps have lived a little bit more of a stagnant life and haven't given ourselves or been through the trauma of a traumatic brain injury, we're still not doing our brains any favours, are we? There's a lot going on in our world these days, and we hear a lot about it through what we eat, how we socialise, whether we're not doing enough exercise, of course, our screens and blue light. We're doing a lot of damage to our brains that we can alter, we can stop, and hopefully give our brains that daily health check that they need.
Oh, 100%. Look, if your audience are listening to this because they want some means of trying to protect their brains as they do protect their skin or protect their liver or protect their bones, then absolutely, yes. It's about time we all sat down and go, well, hang on, things aren't working well, Shelley.
Mm.
You know, Alzheimer's is getting more and more common. It's now the most common cause of death in women in Australia. It's the second most common cause of death worldwide. We've got to do something about it. And you're absolutely right. There are some very, very simple interventions that can completely change your brain health. Diet, like you said, is so important, Shelley. I just can't tell you how important it is. I don't know if you've got the time, but I'd have to take you back to the physiology of the brain. And the physiology of the brain is that it is an incredibly important organ in our body. It receives 25% of the cardiac output. It consumes 20% of all your nutrients, and yet it only occupies about 2% of our body in weight. So that's how important the organ is, and yet we completely ignore its well-being. The basic concept is that the brain, being so active, produces these things called free radicals. And free radicals are a natural sort of byproduct of metabolism, but unfortunately when they accumulate, and they accumulate with things like stress and poor sleep and smoking and sedentary lifestyle, then they become destructive. And they actually accumulate and cause breakdown of DNA and breakdown of cell membranes. And so it's not good to have too many free radicals. Well, there are free radical scavengers that our body makes, like glutathione. We all know about that. But there are also things that we can substitute in our diet to improve our scavenging or neutralizing of these free radicals. So most of them are plant-based, and I'm sure you know that I'm a vegan, so you've got to take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if you look at the literature, it's pretty clear that
Yes.
red meat is not good for you. It accumulates free radicals, and plant-based products are good for you. So colourful vegetables and legumes and flaxseed oil and all the things that I'm sure your audience know about, berries, pawpaw, omega-3s, etc., etc. They're all good for you. And
It's
so
great to have it reinforced by Dr. Charlie Teo. Thank you. Yes.
right. So we can concentrate on plant-based products and try and reduce our animal products. So I used to love fish before I became vegan, and I think, oh well, fish, it's full of omega-3s and it's very, very healthy for you, especially oily fish. You don't realize it is our greatest source of microplastics, fish. And so we are consuming, on the average, Shelley, 1 credit card of microplastics every week. Every week. And what are they concentrated in? They're concentrated in seafood products. They're concentrated in milk. They're concentrated in some plant products, sadly, like apples and carrots. They get absorbed through the skin by the clothes we wear. They get absorbed by our lungs in what we breathe. They get absorbed by our gut in what we eat. And we haven't quite fully understand the deleterious effects of microplastics, but certainly the literature is quite clear that it's not good for you to consume plastics. Some cancers are closely related to plastics, like bowel cancer, possibly pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, lung cancer, inflammation, irritable bowel syndrome, bronchial disease. I mean, look, I can just go on and on
The
and
list
on.
goes on.
And so you've got to reduce your microplastics, you've got to reduce your free radical intake, you've got to increase your antioxidants. Oh my God. And, there's just so much you can do to improve your brain health. Oh, and the one that I recently learned about, because I'm operating in China now. So I operate in China in a place called Wushishan, which is in Hainan province. And the reason they built this huge medical center in Wushishan is because the scientists went around and looked at the NAIs. And I'm sure your audience are fully aware of NAIs. It stands for negative air ions. And negative air ions are great free radical scavengers. So the more NAIs that you can breathe in, the healthier for you.
Mm-hmm.
And NAIs are produced by, waterfalls and smashing water. So it's a whole lot healthier to breathe the air around seawater and waterfalls than it is, buildings. And anyway, they looked at the NAI concentration of New York, and it's about 30 NAIs per square centimeter. Then they looked at the NAI concentration in an open field, and it was about 280. They looked at the NAIs around a waterfall, and it's about 2,800.
Wow.
But then they looked at the NAI concentration in Wushishan in China. It's 30,000. So it's the ideal place for antioxidants and NAIs. It's the perfect storm sort of thing. It's got
Right.
waterfalls, it's got the right climate, it's got the right altitude, it's got the right plants, it's got everything to increase the concentration of NAIs. So when you go to Wushishan for your medical treatment, it's almost like you feel better immediately. Like,
Wow.
yeah, you're healthy as soon as you get there, let alone, the best medical center in the world. So NAIs, and look, I could go on about thiamine, I could go on about molecular hydrogen. There's all these things that we can do to improve our brain health that we are not doing, and they're very, very simple.
And just out there, as in you taking a walk in the fresh air, getting in our NAIs.
Absolutely.
It'd be
Opening your
interesting to
windows.
see it, and this is probably something. I mean, I didn't hear about this through the blue zone conversations, but I wonder what the NAIs in the blue zones are.
It's the perfect question,
Mm,
Shelley. And it's about time we start looking into the blue zones and other places where we live, so we can have you know informed consent about where we live.
mm,
Like if you lived in an area with poor NAI concentration, or lived in an area with fantastic NAI concentration,
mm,
that's something that we should really be looking into when we choose where we want to live.
mm.
Uh,
Well, to hear you say that, yes, we have to look after our diets, we have to get away from processed foods and sugars and as much red meat as we possibly can, to exercise. Of course, as you say, chronic stress is a silent killer, really. Let's talk, and this may be narrowing down on our kids, not particularly our mums or ourselves, but screens, blue light, ear pods, we're hearing a lot about now. What effect do they have on brain health?
Oh, well, I've been widely condemned for identifying electromagnetic radiation as a potential carcinogen. And that was about 20 years ago that I was condemned by my colleagues in Australia. Thank God I've been vindicated, because the
Mm,
WHO has a medical body called IARC, the International Association for Research into Cancer. And IARC have now identified EMR as a potential carcinogen type 2B. So it's not definitively proven, but it's certainly, there's enough evidence in the literature to show that you should try and reduce your EMR, electromagnetic radiation exposure.
mhm,
And EMR is produced by everything electrical. So the electrical wires in the walls of your home, the electrical energy emitted by mobile phones, the electrical energy emitted by digital clocks next to your bed. I mean, all
mhm,
these things sadly emit EMR. So, try and reduce your exposure to EMR. I'm not going to say phones cause brain cancer, because the jury is still out, but there's
mhm,
certainly enough compelling evidence for the IARC to come up with a recommendation that you should try and reduce your EMR exposure.
mhm,
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
mm.
Yeah.
It's an exciting conversation to have, because from what I'm gathering, there is, as you say, a lot of funding, and a lot of brains working on better brain health and research, and that will be very exciting for us all to see come to fruition over the next 10 years or so. The breakthroughs that you've mentioned today, that could possibly help everyone with conditions like dementia and PTSD and depression. We know that they're there. We just have to have the ability to access them, and the little things that we can all do each and every day that are going to help our brains, in the hope that we never experience a TBI ourselves, but taking care of this great, fantastic, incredible supercomputer that is the last frontier. Dr. Charlie, it's been fabulous talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Shelley.
As always, the Aging Project podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. Always seek medical advice from a qualified practitioner.